Hello, welcome back as we look into the question, what is artificial intelligence? In 1861, a New Zealand shepherd named Samuel Butler wrote against the rise of machinery. While he wouldn't have understood AI as we consider it, he reflected a growing concern among that still exists today. In 1937, well before the first modern computer, Stephen Vincent Benet used dark humor to express that fear in Nightmare Number Three, aka The Revolt of the Machines. In Butler's work, he tracks the growing complexity of machines and sees within it the process of mechanical evolution. He argues that as man evolved from a single celled organism, so machines are also evolving today with mankind's assistance. He sees that mankind has already reached the stage where he cannot walk away from machinery and believe that we are on track to become codependent on machines. As humans were dependent upon the animals, so machines would be dependent upon people. He argues that we had become slaves to technology. Throughout the last century, there have been many explorations of mankind's relationship with technology. Some focus on our loss of technology through disaster. Could we survive without it as a crutch, right? Others focus on it rising above us and conquering mankind. Some few works explored mankind living in some sort of man crafted heaven using technology, a paradise without needing a savior. Is technology a crutch that is making us unable to survive without it? Is it going to take over and be our doom? Will we achieve an age of enlightenment where we don't have to work much? Or is the future going to be something decidedly less dramatic? Butler's observations weren't wrong, uh, though his recommendation to destroy all complex tools was a bit far-fetched. Mankind is quite possibly overly dependent upon technology, and tech is constantly increasing in its complexity. The introduction of software has made machines infinitely more complicated. More than that, the average car now has roughly 100 sensors in it. More than that, some cars learn how a person drives, and the computer adapts its responses to reflect that learning. What does it even mean that a car learns, right? I mean, what is this intelligence anyway? Intelligence is a very strongly debated concept. For over a century, men have studied and debated this concept. Ironically, despite all of the efforts to study intelligence, the thing that no one has ever done is successfully defined it. Intelligence has only been described by its various factors that seem important to the researchers. So most would agree intelligence includes reasoning, vocabulary, and math skills. Others would add memory, verbal fluency, physical abilities, and perceptual speed, visual capabilities. We might summarize intelligence then. We look at this stuff, and as a layman, not an expert in the field, I think we would summarize it as the ability to think and learn. That's really a broad definition. And it can encompass many things. At the very least, it involves the ability to process information, to reason, right? That thinking, and the ability to acquire new facts, knowledge, and skills, the learning. Some have argued that intelligence is primarily about genetic heritage. This has led some to decide that some races are genetically less endowed than others. Understandably, there are a lot of people who find that offensive. Others have claimed that while genetic heritage may have some impact, Uh, it's minor, right? The primary factor in intelligence is nurture, how that intelligence was trained and shaped while growing up. What does the Bible say about intelligence, though? Right? The Bible doesn't directly state what is or is not intelligence, but it does indirectly guide us in our understanding. Firstly, we see throughout Scripture that different folks are gifted in differing ways, right? Some are great warriors like David, or even David musicians, right? There's plenty of musicians in the Bible. Others are craftsmen. Not all can craft reasoning like the Apostle Paul, right? Peter acknowledges this fact in his epistles that Paul's writings can be challenging. We see in Scripture that God grants abilities, provides gifting, and determines each person's tool set. So, are genetics a factor in intelligence? Probably, but not exclusively. God is the arbiter of each person's intelligence, as well as other skills that you have. Therefore, Christians should always demonstrate the utmost respect for people, regardless of their innate gifting. Remember, everyone is in the image of God. But secondly, when we look at the Bible and we think about intelligence, we see that the Bible instructs us to develop our intelligence, like any gift. Proverbs 8:5 says, "Learn prudence, O simple ones. Fools, learn intelligence." Again in Proverbs 18:15, "An intelligent mind will acquire knowledge, and the ear of the wise will seek knowledge." Regardless of our gifting, the Bible frames this as that we are called and empowered by God to improve our raw talents. The Bible authors never define intelligence specifically. Rather, they assume that their readers already know what intelligence is. Uh, Typically, when we think about intelligence, we think about those who can reason deeply, understand nuance, and can grasp complicated concepts. And this is reflected in Scripture. While not defining intelligence, the Bible does pair it with skill. Paul uses the idea of intelligence to describe deep thinkers in 1 Corinthians 1:19, where he talks about that there are the wise of the world and that not all Christians are as smart, as intelligent as those people. Christ, we see in the temple as a boy, the teachers are amazed at the depth of his wisdom, as Luke describes in chapter 2, verse 47. We, he is viewed as being very intelligent by the leaders. And in Exodus, we see the craftsmen for the temple being gifted by God with skill and wisdom. And we would look at this and we would say, and I believe fully correctly, they were very intelligent about how they did their craft. We look at some of the things they designed, and it's amazing because there was this intelligence going on. Therefore, I would like to suggest that we take our definition of intelligence, and when we think about this biblical perspective of people who think deeply, who work, who develop it as a skill, like Proverbs says to do, then we would look at intelligence and say it is the ability to think and learn with understanding. It is not enough. The biblical concept has this idea of growth in comprehension. Not just I've learned more facts, but as you see in Proverbs, paired with wisdom, there's this idea that intelligence becomes a maturing, a deepening of skill. It's got to include the why. When I learn new things, there comes to be this growth in my ability to answer that question, why. So, think and learn, and biblically we would add with understanding or comprehension. Now, intelligence, we talked a couple of weeks ago about general intelligence and the idea that this is a baseline capability of all normal adults, all normally functioning adults, right? So the average person on the street has this baseline ability. The average person can reason, they can verbalize, they can move, they can process visual content. Let's consider some examples briefly. Reasoning. Not only can we add two and two together, we understand what we grasp, or we understand why 2 plus 2 equals 4. We grasp the increase in quantity and even more so, the value that it brings. Having $4 is more valuable than $2 because I can buy more with it, or, you know, used to be able to. Anyway, verbalization. We each learn new words and phrases, expressions every year of our lives. Likely, we've learned dozens in the last year, and we've even used some of them in conversation. Maybe our expressions are the things that we've learned are nonverbal, but they still are an expansion of our ability to communicate with others, to provide better nuance, maybe to make someone laugh more effectively. We develop our skill at communication as our language grows and deepens as we talk. We have the ability to move. Most of us, we have the experience where you're taking a step and you realize that you're coming down on something under your foot that will break or hurt you, and you pause your forward momentum, move your foot or shift how you're putting your foot down so you don't get hurt. That intelligence to process all of that happening simultaneously and adjust your momentum is really an amazing piece of intelligence. All the sensory inputs, the micro shifting of your muscles, or, falling over as you try to dodge it. Either way, we've got movement. The visual content, we process the chaotic roads in the darks, and it can be challenging seeing, particularly if you got like construction going on and road changes in an unfamiliar road at night, hard to see, cones everywhere. But as a rule, we can handle that visual, the depth perception, understanding what's happening around us very well. All of these are commonplace for the average adult. Can these skills be replicated? Can we craft a artificial intelligence that can do this? What would it look like if we tried? Well, our intelligence is a general intelligence, and to date, there is no general artificial intelligence, or say artificial general intelligence, an AGI. There are many types of AI, and each AI specializes at a very specific task or collection of tasks, very narrowly defined. They are all one hit wonders. We're going to consider today machine learning, large language models, diffusion models, simulated reasoning, and artificial general intelligence. We're going to define all of these and talk about what they are. So, machine learning, as our start, this is the old one, right? More than a decade ago, machine learning really started to come into its own. And scientists discovered they could teach a computer how to learn things. We'll use air quotes around that learn. The researchers provided the computer with with a complicated instructions and mathematical formulas. And I remember reading a decade ago as they were talking about these things. Even at that stage, the scientists weren't real sure how the machine was doing this, how it was adapting, but it was something was happening in there, and it was working, right? So they give it the algorithm with all this data, and the data would contain the raw starting information, and it would also contain on the other side the desired outcome. And the computer would run the algorithm over and over again, slowly making changes until it could relatively reliably take the raw data and figure out the answer, get to the answer. Then they would bring in new data with no answer and see if the system could run its algorithm to generate that output, the correct output. Um, Consider, for example, as an example of this, the predictive text on your phone. You ever notice how it seems to always know what you want to type and offers it as a word for you to hit the button on? And over time, it seems to adapt and become more and more effective at predicting the words you want. That's machine learning for you. It is learning your vocabulary, the words you're most likely to type, compared to other people, and offering that up. Machine learning doesn't have the wow factor, but it is far and away the most useful of what we would call artificial intelligences today. Machine learning has many positive uses. It's used to determine the difference between an accidental touch on your phone and a deliberate touch. So sometimes when you hold your phone, your edges of your fingers will touch the sides of the screen. It would be really annoying if all of those are registered all the time as your attempt to do input on the phone. Machine learning is used to help reduce those accidental inputs. It's used to make these PowerPoint slides, make them look professional. It's used to identify specific types of cancer cells from photos. It's used to help age portraits of missing children. Machine learning has plenty of less useful applications. It's used to track your buying habits and tailor ads just for you, with the hope that you will be enticed to part with your money for a new bauble. It's used to predict recidivism rates of convicted criminals. It's used to sort through the resumes of job candidates to determine which ones will be the best fit for your company. Uh, to be clear, these are not good uses. Machine learning is used in self-driving cars. In theory, it's been trained to identify all the road hazards and avoid them. Unfortunately, it has a long way to go. Self-driving cars have been known to run, like one ran into the side of a white tractor trailer that was crosswise in the road. Apparently, the system couldn't determine between a bright, cloudy afternoon and the white of the box truck. And so it thought it was seeing a cloud and it was safe to drive. Uh, they also often struggle with poorly marked lanes on the highway and construction cones in the middle of the night. These are things that machine learning is AI struggles with in the everyday world around us that we process just fine. So machine learning, we'll get into more of it in the future. This is when a A machine learns to run a specific algorithm to take inputs and generate a very specific framing of outputs. You said predictive text is, or when your fingers deliberately touching your screen or not touching your screen on your phone. Let's talk about large language models. Several years ago, OpenAI announced that their latest LLM, ChatGPT. It was an amazing bit of technology, and it kicked off this massive, multi-trillion dollar AI race across the globe. What is it? You know, it looks awesome. It seems to be really smart. You get to ask it a question or ask it to generate text, and it does. Um, at its core, an LLM, though, is a probability engine, or as one man called it, a stochastic parrot. An LLM breaks down large quantities of training data, books, dictionaries, articles all over the web, and to understand, the goal is to understand which words commonly follow which words, and in within different contexts. It then uses the probabilities to guess at what word should come next. For example, let's say we ask an LLM to complete the following sentence. I would like a cup of. There are, of course, many probable answers. We could be asking for a cup of coffee, tea, soup, sugar, right? We wouldn't be asking for a cup of lemonade, unless we're a child asking, or a cup of wine. Adults typically put certain types of liquids in cups, other types in glasses, still others in mugs, and a few in steins, right? An LLM would study all the instances where someone referenced a cup of and look at the next word. It would then determine what the most likely next word was. It would generally answer us based on the most common response, right? Because it's going to use the probabilities to say, give an answer. So if it would it would attempt to take into context regional differences. So in England, the most common answer might be, I would like a cup of tea. In Seattle, it's coffee. In the 1960s America, suburbia, it could be, I would like a cup of sugar, from your neighbor. Um, the system is going to make guesses and new generate a paragraph or story or something based on this context and what words typically follow what words. So, does an LLM understand what coffee and tea are? Not a bit. The algorithm breaks down all the word pairs and assigns them probabilities or weights. The numerical value of the weight determines how closely related the words are. Just like your family tree has many connections in it, some that are close and some that are distant, so words have connections as well. The word car would be connected to the word automobile, which is also connected to truck. The car and truck won't be closely related in in some context here, right? Um, car would also be connected to white, as cars have color. It would also be connected to Toyota, right, through Prius. When asked a question, the LLM picks a starting point and guesses at the most likely next word. Um, to be fair, this is a bit of a simplification for the context of what we're doing, but it takes those words and guesses. It'll put the phrase together that it's come up with, and it will try and guess at the next word, and it tracks context through all of this, and it tries to do this until it reaches an answer. In the LLM's brain, uh, the every word is just a probabilistic connection to another word. None of these words have any meanings. They're just numbers in the system. So if you ask the system to produce a sentence, it can do that. The sentence might even look well crafted, but remember, the LLM has no idea what it's outputting. It's just putting probabilities together. This is why LLMs confabulate or make up false information. They provide nonsensical answers because they can't understand the output. There's no comprehension behind their learning. It's just numbers that they translate into letters to put on the screen. Beyond generating a sentence, an LLM can solve a limited number of math problems, create tables of data, rewrite your report to the boss. Remember, though, that the LLM has no idea what it's doing. It's just using probabilities to generate outcomes. LLMs regularly fail to provide useful results when the question does not clearly align with training data. So, if you give this problem to the LLM, that John bought 5 oranges on Friday, on Saturday he bought six more, how many oranges did John have? Typically, the system will give you the right answer, 11, because this is a typical math problem that it's been trained on. But if we adapt it and we add the sentence that two of the oranges were smaller than the previous oranges, the system frequently gets it wrong. Instead of staying with the correct answer of 11, it sees the two oranges, what is known as a distracting element, a distractor in educational terms. It sees those and decides that it has to subtract them from the previous. And so the answer is, they would say the answer is 9. And the reason is the system doesn't actually understand what it's reading. It just sees five, six more, two smaller. That must be a minus, a less. We have not. Now, that's LLMs that generate some really cool text. They can do some really great summarization. They have some value places. But let's move on now to get through all of this. We're going to look at diffusion, talk about diffusion models briefly. Diffusion models are, at the surface level, the diffusion model operates similarly to an LLM, but the output is a picture instead of words. Yes, technically, they're extremely different underlying, but in layman's terms, they do the same thing. Each system generates output based on probabilities. Um, and it's much more complicated than an LLM. Uh, but the same idea is that you're providing, um, they scrape all the pictures off the internet, try to label them, and tell the system that this is a picture of this thing. And it breaks it down and tries to understand it so that it can replicate that idea later. With a diffusion model, you provide the AI with text. Generate a picture of a dog lying beside a pool on a warm August afternoon, right? The system, having been trained on animals, dogs, nature, ponds, temperature, warm, time, afternoon, will then attempt to generate a visual output that reflects that content. Not only can a diffusion model generate a picture for you, it can shape the picture in a few different ways. It can turn it into a photo, pencil sketch, oil painting, or cartoon. Each style is just a filter that the system runs the output through based on the training data. Does a diffusion model have any idea what any of those words are? Again, nope. This picture, One Hit Wonder, was done with a diffusion model. Um, this picture turned out. The other attempts at it were gibberish because the system didn't actually know what it was trying to make. It was guessing. Um, and we see this in more extreme ways when we look at a video generation system. Remember, a video is just a series of still pictures. And so what you're asking is for the AI to create a set of still pictures that are slowly changing. If you want to see an extreme example, look up an AI generated video of a gymnastics, somebody doing gymnastics. The resulting human is nightmare inducing. Arms, legs, and heads appear and disappear off the body as the subject flips around the room. Why would this be? Well, the AI doesn't understand human anatomy at all. It can draw the anatomy, but it doesn't know how the pieces fit together on the human. And so it doesn't understand that the arms and legs have to stay connected in the same spots. And you end up with, in fact, something creepy because it doesn't understand what it's doing. It's just generating output. In 2024, in September last year, 2024, um, OpenAI now releases their newest AI that was deliberately built on the principles of logic and reasoning, and they called it simulated reasoning. One of the problems with the LLM and diffusion models is that the system just guesses wildly. With simulated reasoning, the computer attempts to break the problem down and solve each part of the question independently. Then it assembles the answers into a coherent answer. With other AI systems, as with all the other systems, or sorry, with other systems, what the computer is doing happens in a black box. We have to guess at what's going on the inside. And that's just based on our limited understanding of its design and the output that we receive. And seriously, not even the designers are certain what exactly happens inside the computer when an AI is running. With simulated reasoning, this is changing. The systems have been designed to show their chain of thought. This allows the user to see the line of reasoning to the answer. What does the system actually understand about its inputs and outputs? Still, not a thing. It's just learned to break it all down into these tokens or large numbers and process via probabilities and the principles of reasoning. Simulated reasoning is so new to the market and so expensive to mess with. There really isn't a lot of real world data around it, though it is still just um, a series of logic to help problem solve. There is no evidence that there's any comprehension to date. So that brings us to artificial general intelligence. Because all of the systems are one hit wonders, they fall short of having that general intelligence. What is the point of having an AGI? It would be similar to having a person being there, right? It can learn new tasks, it would grow in its knowledge and understanding of the world. You could bring in a new type of problem and it could eventually teach itself to solve it. Business leaders believe that the first company that produces an AGI will become the richest company the world has ever known. Governments believe that the first country to produce an AGI will become the most powerful country ever. And so the race to make an AGI is on. Who will win? Who will write their name amongst the stars and achieve immortality through the history books? No idea. With a rough understanding of the different types of AI, let's consider the fiction of AGI. When people think about AGI, this artificial general intelligence, they tend to think about what they've seen on TV. They think about R2D2 and C3PO. They mention data from Star Trek, Ultron, Jarvis, or HAL. People think about AI as having a personality, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Within their fictional universes, each of these would be an example of an AGI. Are these portrayals realistic? In each of the examples, the robot has a personality and behaves in a clever manner. They are self aware and can make independent decisions. But why? Why would we assume that a collection of microchips and some software can become self aware? The basis for this belief relies on the idea that mankind is a biological computer. At some point in evolution, the biological hardware and software reached a junction point where consciousness spontaneously appeared. Following this line of reasoning, an infant is not born self aware and is not fully human. Um, until the brain reaches a certain point, as yet unknown how to define it, this certain point of development, the child is not yet fully human. In the same manner, it is expected that an increase of computer power and better self learning software will eventually produce a true intelligence. This idea fails on so many levels. Primarily, it's all theory. It cannot be tested and cannot be verified. No one is able to measure consciousness in a lab. We can't fully define human thinking, let alone define consciousness. Like so many things in the materialist worldview, their proof for this position comes down to, and it starts and ends with, however improbable it is, we're here, and so it happened at least once. Ergo, it can happen again. And that just makes these assumptions that are uh, not sustainable. Even without consciousness, so not self-aware, can it still become intelligent? Sam Altman here, the CEO of OpenAI, likes to state that AGI is nearly upon us. It won't be long, he says, before AGI will take care of all of our drudgery. We'll be free to pursue creative endeavors and improve our world. But when Altman discusses intelligence, specifically AGI, if one looks really closely, they will see that he redefines the term. He consistently narrows the definition to match the product path of his company. He's not alone in this, of course. All those invested in selling AI products do the same thing. But why? Why change the definitions? Um, they change them because they know we are far away from having anything that operates like a human mind. Human mind is just so amazing. At its core level, an AI cannot understand its output. For a computer, everything boils down to ones and zeros. Just as a man born blind cannot understand color, so a computer cannot understand the physical world. Until a computer is able to do that, it's just a clever faker. Remember that we generally described intelligence as the ability to think and learn with understanding, with comprehension. When we learn, we acquire skills and adapt our understanding. Someone could teach you to say a phrase in a foreign language, but if they never gave you the translation, what have you actually learned? A mason might learn that stones with particular shapes are more visually appealing than other stones. He develops an understanding of his craft that encompasses beauty. A baker might learn how to develop sourdough starter to produce the perfect boule. They might eventually understand how to adapt their bake to work with the state of their temperamental starter, unlike me. The computer learning is fundamentally different and is more akin to simple recitation without comprehension. The computer cannot learn with comprehension, no matter how cleverly this truth is disguised. This is the grand illusion. How many people would love to have C3PO or from Star Wars or Data from Star Trek around? They're quirky, funny, and helpful. They're witty and clever. We might even want to feel a kinship with them. And so people have this, they fall for this illusion because this is what they want to see. It looks fun and enjoyable. Here's the dirty little secret: everything those characters said and did that was said was written by a human hand. Every line was delivered by a human voice. Every action was performed by a human actor. People forget that the character is a person in a cleverly designed costume. They aren't AI, and they don't model AI in any way, shape, or form. This is a great way to think about AI generally. Everything that AI says and does was programmed or learned from a human. All the data that they train on is human generated. When you converse with Siri about directions, you might end the conversation with a thank you. You might even think, that was a pleasant conversation. That entire interaction was programmed, user tested, modified, and adjusted so that you would find Siri pleasant to correspond with. This didn't just happen. Hundreds of millions of dollars are dumped into Alexa, Gemini, Copilot, and Siri to make them feel like your best friend. Uncounted hours are spent by programmers, social scientists, researchers, beta testers to ensure that you will enjoy talking to AI. None of it is real. It's not alive. It's just a collection of rules and math formulas paired with clever software that is designed to evoke the feeling of being a real person. All of the data that AI uses to help you came from a real person. When a diffusion engine generates a picture, it sourced all of its training material from the collected works of humans. It's not creating new things. It's remixing what people have already made. Does an LLM look intelligent? Certainly. At times. Okay, occasionally. The truth is that despite looking clever, it's just producing content that is designed to look like human content. It cannot learn in a manner that it's all just a clever illusion. As we think about AI, we need to keep things in perspective. AI is not alive, nor is it intelligent. Therefore, saying thank you to it, treating it like it's a friend, makes no sense. AI can be useful under certain circumstances. Okay. Um, is it useful in a lot of circumstances? Your mileage may vary. But it has places where it's a good thing. But remember, AI cannot can never think and learn with comprehension. It follows the rules that someone dictated to it. All AI can do is create the illusion of intelligence. That illusion might be useful, but we must keep in mind that it is only an illusion of intelligence. True intelligence is tied to the Imago Dei. Next time, we will discuss artificial intelligence as it relates to the moral image of God. And following that, we'll move to the relational image of God and the missional image of God over the next few weeks, looking at what its impact is between the one, what is its impact is on the image of God and how we exercise the image of God. Thanks, and we'll see you then.